Well, hello there. You know, the odd thing about last video, the 4-minute video that I made while I was up on the mountaintop in Kentucky, is that I said my Florida friends, I'm at my Florida friend's house, and then I said I was in Kentucky on a mountaintop, and then I had all these people say, "There's no mountains in Florida, what are you talking about?" It's like, I never said I was in Florida. I said I was in sub-zero temperatures on a mountaintop. Of course I wasn't in Florida. But for some reason, a lot of people heard Florida friends and me hearing the words mountaintop. And they thought I was like joking or pulling their leg or something. So, there's no mountains. That's really weird. I'll say one thing, but people will hear something completely different. Isn't it interesting how that works? You know that you could go down this rabbit hole endlessly, and I've, out of 8,000 plus videos, I've actually never done a video on this topic, and that's on the arithmetics of the divine and also, too, some of the hidden secrets therein. And I'm going to show you a couple things that I've never talked about before, and a couple really key important things. And I pointed out phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. That's a mathematical certainty, and that's a reference to the divine or to the agathon, i.e. the absolute. So you can take your pick what word you want to choose regarding that. But there's also, too, a hidden proof within Plato's Republic 509d to 511. It was not written by Plato, by the way. It's far more ancient than Plato. By the way, there's a couple books that you could actually read that are quite ancient. One is the Theology of Arithmetic by Iamblichus, and it goes all the way back to Pythagoras, and who knows before then. Another one's really hard to get a hold of unless you find it online somewhere. That's Theon of Smyrna, the author. It's called Mathematics Useful for Understanding Plato, but it should say Mathematics Useful for Understanding Pythagoreanism. There are no numbers, and I've said this many countless times, in Mother Nature. There's only proportions and ratios, some of which are divine and some of which are profane from the standpoint of metaphysics. Number 6 is a profane number because it falls just outside the number 5, where life and being is complete, i.e. ontos. And the original ancient, non-Christian, the original Trinity, and who knows how super ancient it is a reference to the first digits of the Fibonacci sequence, which are 1, 1, which is the first aspect of the Trinity, 2, 3, which is magnitude and matter, and number 5 is ontos, or being. Within that is not a number, and I'd like to talk about that in a second, but everything is complete in 5, and anything after 5, of course, is excess. Everything in ancient metaphysics is the same thing, that excess is evil, and evil is excess. By the way, the first, the digits that exist of the Fibonacci sequence within the boundaries of 10, 1 and 10 is not actually considered by the ancient Pythagoreans or the Greeks or the Egyptians as a number, rather full circle. So 10 is 1, and no different, 1 as a representative of coming full circle. I mean, if you say a circle has 10 degrees, for example, which of course it doesn't, it has 360, and there's a whole metaphysics behind why a circle has 360 degrees instead of 20 or 100 or 1,000. That's another matter, but 10 is completion. So the ancient Greeks, for example, the same as the Egyptians and the Indians, didn't consider 1 to be a number. They considered it to be the principle, and they didn't consider 10 to be a specific number within the subset of the metaphysics of the divine. They considered it to be full circle. So 1 and 10, you're making reference to the same thing. 0, by the way, is also 2, not a number in the metaphysics of the Greek, Indian, and Egyptians. So 3 digits are considered not to be digits at all. 1 is the principle. 10 is the same thing as coming full circle, and 0 is just a placeholder. 0 is not a number, it's a placeholder. And the representation of 10 would be full circle anyway, which of course is completion to return from which you started. And of course the start and the beginning, the alpha of everything, of course, is 1. So 1, 10, and 0 are not numbers in this metaphysics or theology of arithmetic, as Iamblichus called it. Specifically, it's actually the theurgy or the substrate of the universe, the mathematics thereof. And it's not actually mathematics. This is an incorrect term, even though I just used it. What it's a reference to is Pythagorean and Platonic arithmetic. And arithmetic is not to be confused with math. We all got trained on the garbage of math in high school and college and whatnot, but this is a reference to arithmetic. One in the logo set. By the way, the numbers that are actually missing, before I get that actually, anyway, the digits that exist between 1 and 10 of the Fibonacci sequence are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8, which total up to 20, and which, of course, 20 is two sets of 10. And this is the two sets of the principle and the attribute. And this is gets behind the meaning that I've talked about endlessly of the two types of light in metaphysics and the two types of darkness that I'll get to in a second. The numbers that are actually missing between 1 and 10 in the Fibonacci sequence are 4, 6, 7, and 9. 4 is time. There's a reason why Chinese and Japanese, the number 4 means death, because anything that partakes of death partakes of time, partakes of death. Anything that is exposed to or must suffer under the yoke of time, of course, suffers under death. Certain numbers are actually words, and the Christians and the Christian mystics never got this. I'm the discoverer of this. Yes, I am. You won't find a reference to it anywhere else. 666 is not the number of evil, but it is evil. Excess is evil, and evil is excess. It's the number of man, and man is marked by a specific number, 666. It means, in Greek, the word is exisios. In Latin, it is excessius. In English, it's nearly the same word, which is excess. Evil is excess, excess is evil. The third digit, which is missing in the Fibonacci sequence, which is a return by being through theurgy to wisdom. Wisdom, according to Iamblichus and the Pythagoreans, was considered wisdom, also to Athena, and the Virgin, not the Virgin Mary, etc., Judeo-Christian Christian ideas of same, rather of rebirth in the divine, because Athena is wisdom, the fruition of wisdom is the virginity of existence. And existence is once again the wrong word. Existence literally means to be outside of yourself. The virginity of being, or true ontos, i.e. of the soul, not the existential self, the psychophysical, rather the fullness of wisdom, and this is a representation of 7. 9 is also, too, considered the greatest number in the decad. This is also, too, from the theology of arithmetic, and completely accurate. That's the upper limit and the maximum number within the set of 10. 10, once again, is a return to the 1. It's not a number. It's not upper limit. Upper limit from the position of the Greeks, Indians, and Egyptians is the decad. The Ennead, excuse me, I said the decad. I'm sorry, I was thinking about 100 things at once. The Ennead. Oops, something fell back there. Oh, my antenna fell down on me. Well, I'll edit that out of this video. There you go. Get out of there. I must have hit the antenna back there. The Ennead, it's a reference to upper limit or potential, the boundary, the Hyperion, also to a reference to the sphere. And it's also to the tripartite Trinity. There are, of course, 3 trinities within, encapsulated within the Ennead. In other words, the 9 is a max limit. So these digits that don't exist between 1 and 10, also 10, but 10 is not a number. 10 would also, too, be it, because the Fibonacci sequence goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Not counting 10. 10 is the 1. Are these 4 numbers of time, which is 4, 6, which is excess, 7, which is wisdom, i.e. Athena, i.e. Rebirth in the absolute sense of returning to the 1, and 9 being upper limit of all potential, i.e. iterations of the cosmos, aesthetos, the aesthetic cosmos of form and phenomena. There are 2 1s, of course, within the first two digits of the Fibonacci sequence. And they're not 2 different 1s. It's not like 1 here and 1 here. The first 1 is the secret of the hidden 1. This, of course, is a reference to the black light, or to the black sun, i.e. the unmanifest, which has no Cartesian value or footprint, i.e. the agathon, the absolute. The Godhead, take your pick. This would be akin to the dialectric As I've shown you, like easily 1,000 different videos of the supercell, yeah, where you actually see that black hole in the center, that is destructive magnetism, i.e. constructive dielectric. That would be analogous, nearly perfectly so. It would be right here too. You kind of like this hourglass right here. We have the sand here and sand here, and yes, the sand is falling through here. But if you actually look down here, you'd actually see nothing, and right here there's nothing. That would be the first one, the black sun, the hidden one. That, of course, is the first darkness, and that's the noble darkness. And of course, there's a profane darkness. There's a noble light and a profane light. There's a noble darkness, and there's a profane darkness. I'm getting to that in a second. The second one in the Fibonacci sequence, which of course goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, so on and so forth, is illumination. Once again, the attribute, or that which is revealed. This is, of course, the demiurge. This is perfectly analogous to magnetism. Magnetism is the dielectric field. The light of the one, or the good, is, because that which the good is that which the good does, and does is not really a perfect word. This is the euristos dies. This is the ratio and proportionality of perfection relative to the one, i.e. the attribute, like light and illumination, principle and attribute, dielectric as first one, and magnetism as the second one, principle and attribute. And both are one thing. The negative, by the way, an hourglass shape is a hyperboloid. Yeah? People say, what's a hyperboloid? Well, a hyperboloid is an hourglass shape. Well, the negative image of a hyperboloid is the torus. The negative image of the torus is a hyperboloid. Together they form the conjugate binary of the entire universe, but they're not two different things. Everything in this universe must be logical, rational, and simple. The first two digits of the Fibonacci sequence, the good and the good, light and illumination, dielectric and magnetic, everything from every corner of this universe, as the Pythagoreans, and who knows before them, accurately discovered, is the secret logos and ratio of the divine. Once again, there are no numbers in nature, but there are ratios and proportionalities, and everything is hyper-rational and hypersensible within the first 10 digits. But the first two digits are 1 and 1, principle and attribute. Once again, not a second one, of course, rather attribute of the one. The first two of the Trinity is monad and mind, or the agathon and the nous. The second is a light and illumination, or this is magnitude and matter in the case of being. 4, of course, is not present within the first 5 digits of the Fibonacci sequence. I might point out to you, and the only number missing, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. 4 is time. Time does not exist. Time is a measure, and measure is not a thing. There's a reason why every ancient culture, including the Pythagoreans and who knows before them, said time was the number 4. It is the holographic principle, and it's not a principle at all in the sense of the true principle, which of course is the agathon, or the absolute, or the divine, or the good. Take your pick of what words. Mother Nature doesn't care what silly human beings use for words to describe important things, but it doesn't exist at all. Number 5 is ontos, or being, and of course there is a third thing, and I'm going to quote Tamius 31b to 32c. Plato didn't write this. This is very, very ancient, far more ancient than Plato. But two things alone cannot be satisfactorily united without a third, for there must be some bond between them, drawing them together. And all of the bonds, the best of which makes itself and the terms it connects a unity in the fullest sense, and in that nature continued geometrical proportion to effect, which is most perfect. This is a reference to water. Water is the secret logos, it is the Holy Spirit, it is the bond which ties, and it is not number. Logos, by the way, the ancient Greeks said this, Pythagoreans said this, what you call the golden ratio or the golden section, I don't care what you call it, or phi, which is not a number, it's proportionality relative to 1, is not a number at all. Well, sure it's a number, because phi is 1.6138, so on and so on. No, it's the ratioed perfection, or the holography of the one, which makes the union between two things, matter and spirit, in this case, possible. And that third thing which makes life possible is a perfect logos of absolute incommensurability, which of course, once again, makes up this neat little thing, which is this geometry, which is the water molecule. You have the 108, 36, 36 degree triangle, the base of which is phi and is perfectly incommensurable. I could sit here and talk about it for hours and make incommensurable cuts. 1 becomes 1 over phi, and 1 over pi becomes 1 over phi to the power of negative 2. And then 1 over phi to the power of negative 2 becomes 1 over the phi to the power of negative 3. Then phi squared, phi cubed. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Perfect self-similarity, and there's only one geometry in the universe that's perfect like that. And the only molecular geometry that has that is water. And of course, without water, there is no such thing as life. This is the reference to the ancient quote of the Timaeus 31b, the third thing which makes the joining or the union between two things, that being matter and spirit, possible. Getting back to the two lights and the two darknesses, too. This is one of the fundamental secrets of the entire universe, and also, too, of the Greeks, Pythagoreans, and the Egyptians. The two lights, of which there are two, and of the two darknesses there are two. Of the two lights, the second one in the Fibonacci sequence, which is illumination, that's a light. And the secondary light is at 3, which is where matter exists. And of course, with matter, you have the resistance to illumination. I mean, there's only two things in the universe, you and the sun, and you have your back to the sun, and it's absolute darkness. You actually have to have matter for the manifestation of light, but this is the consubstantiality of light, not light itself, because people confuse light and illumination. So this is at 3 of the Fibonacci sequence, because 2 and 3 are magnitude and matter. By the way, if you want to follow this in detail and go further down the rabbit hole, I've got it in the description below. It's called the Aurora Sapientiae. It's a 2-page list. A lot of people dared me that I couldn't make it, and of course I did make it a few years ago. You could download that and follow this. There are two darknesses. There's the darkness of the first one of the Fibonacci sequence. This is a reference to the agathon of the absolute. And the other darkness is after 3. Remember the first secondary light is at 3. In other words, when you have matter, you know, you have the manifestation of light, but that's not light at all. That is a secondary consubstantial light reflected off of and the illumination of matter, because 3 is a reference to matter. Magnitude and matter, which are both co-eternal, just as the first two ones are co-eternal, principle and attribute, magnitude and matter. And the third, of course, is the combination due to the logos, which is not number, rather a ratio. And a ratio is not a number. A ratio is a perfect proportionality between two other things. This is the secret logos and the super secret mystery, really, that every ancient mystic has been trying to solve since the beginning of time. It's like, what's this thing that is the mystery and secret joiner, kind of like the super glue that binds two things together? It's not number, and it's not definitive, and you can't stick your finger on it. Well, it's the euristostaios, it's incommensurability. This is the harmony and ratio of the entire universe, and the only thing that encapsulates that is water. But it is not number. It is ratio. Ratio and proportionality is not number. Sure it is! Because water, you said, is phi, and it represents, you know, the golden ratio. No, no, no. No, no, no. That's a number. The ratio that defines the golden ratio is a reference to two numbers and the ratioed proportionality between each other, not a number itself. And there's a little secret that I'm not told any of you about, found in the Plato's Republic Divided Lines section, which I've written an article about, which you can find below. Anyway, that second darkness is after 3. The first light is at 3, where you have the manifestation of light. The second darkness is after 3. That is the darkness of light's absence from the shadow cast. And people make substantiation of shadows, but shadows are not things. Shadows are the absence of something. So you have two lights and two darknesses, and without understanding this, you cannot understand any of the hidden secrets of the mysteries, the Chaldean oracles, of Pythagoras, Plotinus, Numenius, Syrianus, Advaita Vedanta, the Vedas, the Upanishads, on and on and on. Egyptian mysteries, Greek mysteries, and you can't understand any of it without understanding that. It literally is quite impossible. And it's all perfectly rational and reasonable and sensible and really very simple, honestly. Anyway, 9 is the boundary, and this is the reason why. And of course, up here we have the angle 108. Over here we have the two angles 36 and 36. All of those angles add up to 9 because this is the boundary of everything. 9 is the upper limit number. You have the divine logos of matter, which of course ultimately in this case that which joins matter and spirit being water, then the incommensurable third thing which makes life possible. This is the divine ratio that I've talked about. It's not number, rather proportionality and logos. So you have 5 completes the Trinity. 1, 1, 2, 3, and 5. The unseen are, of course, are time, and the other unseen, time is completely unreal, it's a measure. The other unseen is the logos. The logos is the incommensurability. There's a reason why these Greek words, sure, the aorist dyad is translated as indefinite dyad. No, they're untranslatable. You can translate it as the euristos dias. And the other word that references it, there's 2 other words that references tolma and ananke. These are untranslatable. You can say ananke translates as necessity, but it doesn't actually. There's a reason why there's no singular translation for the word logos. Depends on the context in which the word logos exists. If you truly understand what the logos is, there's not one single thing that ever translates it. In certain contexts, there are, but specifically, there's no one thing. So this is what logos means. And this is what mystics and metaphysicians have been trying to wrap their head around for thousands of years. And it's really divinely simple. Mother Nature is not keeping any secrets. The only secret is human beings' lack of adamancy to understand metaphysics, which is not objective and demonstrable and substantial. It is subjective, and human beings have a hard time understanding subjective things. So this logos, which is the manifestation of the harmony between one and one. Here, hidden in the secret, you take a line, you divide it unevenly, you take each one of those sections and divide it unevenly again. You end up with phi 1, 1 over phi, which is phi to the power of 3, which is 4.23606, which is also 2, 1 over phi to the power of negative 3. But if you take the midpoint between the entire line from beginning to end, you end up with this little section right here, which is phi to the power of negative 3, which is 0.23606. That's the hidden, that's the secret darkness, or the secret darkness of the first one, i.e. its attribute, like light and illumination. Because nobody sees light, they only see illumination. And if you actually subtract 0.23606 from 1, which is what this section is, you end up with 0.76, etc., etc., etc. It's 0.7639. You take 0.76, the remainder after removing out phi to the power of negative 3, or 0.23606, so the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, like referring to illumination relative to light, or like referring to magnetism relative to the dielectric. You take 0.7639 and you multiply it times phi, and you end up with a secret here of 1.23606. So hidden within all of this is an unhidden attribute. That would be the dark light, i.e. the extrinsic attribute of the divine, of God, of the absolute. In other words, you're looking at everything here, but there's a hidden section, and that hidden section amounts to arithmetically actually, not mathematically, of 0.23606, which is phi to the power of negative 3. 1 over its attribute, or principle over attribute, or magnetism, dielectric over magnetic. You end up with the totality of everything seen here. The visible universe, the invisible universe, the physical universe actually over here, and the metaphysical universe. This is what the goofballs of so-called science call dark matter. We know we see this massive amount of energy, but we can't see it. We know all the stuff over here, but we can't figure out what, like, 80% of everything, which is over here. Well, the Pythagoreans and the Platonists figured this out ages and ages ago. You know, you don't need a telescope and a supercomputer to figure out what you can figure out through simplex retroduction and dialectic analysis of the metaphysics of the universe. So you end up with 1.23606, or 1 plus the attribute of the 1. Kind of like saying dielectric plus the attribute of the dielectric, which is magnetism. Once again, it's the conjugate binary of the entire universe, the hyperboloid and the torus, light and illumination. We end up with the 2 lights and the 2 darknesses. The 2 lights are easily explicable. The second one in the Fibonacci sequence, which is the attribute, and at 3. The 2 darknesses, which is the first one, which has no objective footprint in the universe. Because everything in the universe comes from a hole or returns into a hole. We experience the entire universe. Nostril, mouth, ear, nose, the blacks of our eyes. You know, this little hole in our belly button, which is, you know, how we were sustained alive. On and on and on and on. I love it when people say, there's no such thing as counter space. It's crazy. Counter space is just another word for saying ground. In an electrical circuit, ground, you could say counter space instead of ground, or ground instead of counter space. Everything comes from nothing, but not nothing in the sense of nihil ex nihilo, but the unmanifest. So, anyway, there's a secret there, and if you want an arithmetic proof that phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi, and this is the logos of the entire universe, you need look no further than this secret within Plato's Republic 509d to 511. It's called the divided line. All you have to do is take the midpoint on the 4 sections. You take a line, divide it unevenly, take each one of those sections, divide it unevenly, you end up with phi, 1, 1, 1 over phi. But the midpoint to the remainder of the 1, and this is the principle and attribute right here, which are 1 and 1, principle and attribute. And over here you have phi, and over here you have 1 over phi. This is matter. This is the noetic universe. This is the principle and attribute in unison, which are one thing, not two. So this is really 1, even though this is 1 and 1. It keeps going further and further and further down the rabbit hole, right? But it's all perfect self-similarity and perfect simplicity. You just take that little section, and that's phi to the power of -3. The remainder, 0.76 times phi, and you end up with 1.23606, or 1 and its attributes. So this secret 1 has a hidden section, and that hidden section is what the ancient Greeks and Pythagoreans called the Euristos Dias. And this is the arithmetic of the entire universe. By the way, this is the nous, this is the psyche, this is the 1, and this is matter. Over here you have monad, mind, magnitude, matter, and man, i.e. ontos, or life. Monad and mind, the agathon and the nous. This is the original Trinity, by the way. You think the Trinity is somehow have its origins in Christianity? No. It's extremely ancient. I will point out to you one last important thing. Every Christian mystic that anybody has any love towards was a crypto-Pythagorean or a Neoplatonist. All Christian mysticism and Sufism and followers of the Zohar, all of that is stolen from Pythagoreanism and Neoplatonism. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. Sufism is just Arabic Neoplatonism, Christian mysticism, also too Neoplatonism. All the things that you think is original to those religions or beliefs, it is not. It's taken from Neoplatonism. So this is the theology of the divine and the arithmetic of the deepest mysteries of the universe, from one end to the other, not just this earth. It has to be completely universal from one corner of this universe. It can't be specific to this world, this earth that we inhabit. It can't be. I mean, if it was, then it wouldn't be the truth, because it has to be absolutely universal from one corner to the next. And this is universal from one corner of the universe to the next. Thank you so much for watching. If you ever like these videos, any donations are always warmly welcome, or send me an email. Thanks for watching. Lux et Veritas.